In my last video, I broke down what Harness GitOps is and why DevOps teams are switching to it. Less manual YAML and better deployment visibility, baked-in policy controls. Today I'll show you exactly how it works in practice. We'll start from a clean setup, connect a GitOps agent to a Kubernetes cluster, sync manifests from a repo, and push real deployment using Harness. At the center of the setup is the GitOps Agent. It runs in your cluster and talks to Harness. Then there's your Git repo that holds all the manifests or Helm charts. Harness lets you define what it calls an application, which ties together your repo, target cluster, and sync behavior. Let's jump into a walkthrough.
First, we'll go to GitOps on the left, then go to Settings, GitOps Agents, and we'll click New GitOps Agent. We're going to click No on it having an existing ArgoCD, and enter a name. And in this instance, we're going to use the default namespace. Click Continue, and download the values. The override YAML contains any project-specific settings such as token and any names. And once we've got that, we can copy the commands and paste them into the terminal here. We've already got the repo added and updated, but when we do the Helm install, we will see that the agent is successfully installed. And if we list out the pods, we can see that we've got the GitOps agent running there. Once the agent is installed with Helm, it will eventually connect to Harness and it will show as active. Still pending, there we go, we can see it's running. If we click continue, it will run the tests. You can see the verification was successful there. So now we're hopping over to the repository section. We'll click new repository, Git, give the repo a name, and the Git agent is what's going to be used to monitor this repository. Select the one we created earlier, and I'll enter in the details for my Git repo. I'm going to use HTTPS with credentials. Save that. You'll verify the connection, click Finish. A repository is a logical object within Harness that references a repository and an agent. Let's just check out the repository we'll be using. We've got the service YAML and the nginx YAML. Very basic setup, and this is the manifests that will be deployed by Harness. We'll now create a new application. We'll give it a name, merge ready, select Argo as the operator, select the agent that we created earlier, create a new service. A Harness service is another logical object that is used to represent the application that you are deploying to Kubernetes. Give it a name. We'll keep it inline and all the rest of this default. Click New Environment. A Harness environment represents the area to which you're deploying your application. We'll call this one Dev. Pre-prod, and we'll leave the rest of this as default as well. Click Continue. Select the sync policy options that you want. The sync policy settings will be used in the manifest file for the application, which will dictate how it syncs. Click Continue. Select the repo ID that we created earlier. Select the target revision. This is the branch that we want to monitor, and the path to the YAML files. In our instance, it's just the root. And we'll leave the rest of that at default. We'll just use the default namespace here for ease of use. And select the server. The Harness agent can connect to the cluster that it's in, or if it has access, it can also connect to any other clusters. And apply. Finish. Once you've created the application, Harness will attempt the initial deployment. And we can see that deployment here. Applications. Click on an application resource view, and it will give us a nice visual of the deployment. We can see the service at the top and the deployment at the bottom. If we list out the pods, we should see, there we go, we've got the 3 Nginx containers there. And if we look at the services, we can see we got the Nginx service there, still pending. So now we'll keep an eye on the pod status, and we'll modify the manifest to, let's say, have 1 replica instead of 3. And we'll see how Harness handles the deployment of that change. We see it's still there. Commit changes and commit. It's not going to change until we click sync or until the sync runs. There we go. We can see it's terminated 2 of those pods to bring it in line with the 1 replica in the manifest. So now if we go to the deployment itself and edit that in line, so this is editing it outside of the source code, we'll look for replica in here. There we go. So we'll change that back to 3, apply those changes, and have a look and see if we have increased those pods to 3.
When using the self-heal option, if you modify manifests, Harness will automatically detect that there's drift and repair that with the desired state that's in your repository.
Now we can disable the self-heal, apply that, and if we head back over to the deployment, and we will change those replicas again. We'll find replica, set it to 3, apply changes. So now we've modified the manifest, but there's no self-heal, so the manifest will be reflected in the deployment. You can see there we've got 3 pods running. And if we look at the app diff, we can see that there's drift between the source code and the application, and that diff is the replicas. If we click sync, you'll force synchronization between the source code and the deployment, which will hopefully terminate those 2 pods. There we go, so we've got 1 pod there.
So is it really that easy? Honestly, yes, most of the time the integration is clean, especially if you're managing multiple clusters or environments. I like the built-in RBAC, the event logs and the audit trails. But when something breaks, you still need to understand ArgoCD basics. The UI isn't always great at surfacing detailed errors. If you're building a platform or scaling delivery across teams, Harness GitOps gives you a structured, scalable way to do it.
A huge thank you to DevOps Digital, the team powering secure, scalable DevOps behind the scenes. If you're looking to implement GitOps properly or need expert help with Harness, they're the crew you want in your corner.
The docs and repo links are in the description, so subscribe if you want the next one.